Hi everybody, this is Ron and welcome once again to Mostly Old Parts. Today we are going to dispel one of the greatest rumors and myths and misinformations that I think has ever been bestowed upon the aftermarket or even the basic maintenance of automobiles. For the last 30, 40 years that I've been working on cars, this is one of my pet peeves and I'm going to tell you all about it. There is no place on a car for Teflon tape. Period. Let me repeat it again for the people in the back who may not be able to hear me. There is no place on an automobile for Teflon tape. Okay? I'm going to show you why. This, my friends, is the offender. This is absolutely, positively not for automobile use. This is Teflon tape. It's stringy. It's nasty. It's used to seal toilets in your house. You can seal an outdoor faucet with it if it has pipe threads on it. It is not, repeat, not for a car. Get that crap out of here. A lot of people think it's necessary when they're sealing up the threads on a fuel fitting on their carburetor that you have to use Teflon tape to make it seal. Folks, this is an inverted flare nut. There's no taper to these threads. They thread right into the carburetor, and this is where it seals. This is called an inverted flare. You see that inner flange on that thing, how nice and shiny it is? That is what seals your fuel line to your carburetor. It is not the threads on the nut. The nut presses on the back side of the seal. See how that comes in contact with that? And as it threads into the carburetor, or maybe up, you can do this same thing with 3/16 brake line. It's the same thing. It's got an inverted flare. You've got an inverted flare nut. The nut does nothing to seal the line in place. All it does is provide a clamping force on the back side of the flare. There's the back side of the flare. Now I get this thing to focus here. And this comes down and squishes this flare, the inner flare, into the receptacle it goes into. So hang on, I got that here. This is what you're looking at. Get some light on the subject here so you can see what's going on. See that raised center section? It's kind of like a cone that sticks up. That is what the fuel line or your brake line or whatever other kind of line you're using with inverted flares, that's what seals on this inner flare, this guy right here, and that nut just provides a clamping force to keep the two from leaking. Okay? Understood? All right, on to the next subject. This is a pipe plug. Okay, this is pipe thread. You'll find these things in intake manifolds and various other places on a car. Okay, you might find them in your cylinder heads where somebody has taken out a sending unit and put a plug in or whatnot. Okay, if you look really closely at the threads, this end of the thread is wider than this end of the thread. It's tapered. It is tapered for a reason. It goes into a tapered hole. This particular one goes in the back of an intake manifold to plug off where your intake port would, or your intake would provide vacuum to like power brakes. Okay, my car's got manual brakes, so I don't need that. So instead of using Teflon tape and risking getting that nasty stuff into the motor, okay, what I use is just some good old number 2 Permatex. Quite possibly the greatest thing ever made. Number 2 Forma Gasket Sealant made by Permatex. A bit of caution, okay? This stuff is non-hardening and remains pliable forever. I mean, forever. I've used this stuff on intake manifolds. I've pulled the plugs out after 30 years. And this stuff remains pliable. It never hardens. It never sets up. It is not silicone, okay? It is not silicone. This is number 2 Permatex. Now, its greatest strength, being non-hardening and pliable forever, is also its greatest drawback. And you have to use extreme caution using this stuff, because if you get it on your fingers, it's as bad as butyl rubber or anti-seize. You'll get it everywhere. So if you get it on something you don't want it on, clean it up immediately. Man, you'll get it on your dog, you'll get it on your kids, wherever, and they'll take it to school with them. They'll get it on stuff all over, and the teacher's going to call you and wonder, what the heck is all over my classroom? It's number 2 Forma gasket made by Permatex. It's amazing stuff. You just put a little dab on the threads, and you don't need much. Just a quick dab across, and as you screw it in, it will disperse itself around the threads, and you get a nice tight seal on a pipe thread. Do not use this number 2 Forma gasket on inverted flare fittings. These things go in dry. Don't use a sealer. Don't use that god-awful Teflon tape. That Teflon tape will break loose. Little strings and shards of it will break loose and get in your needle and seat in your carburetor, and it is going to flood. The worst thing, 2 things are going to happen, all right? Your carburetor is going to catch that stuff in a needle and seat. It's going to flood over. It's going to wash out your cylinders with gasoline, and you're going to ruin the motor. Or it's going to flood so bad, gasoline is going to go everywhere. You're going to get it on a hot surface, and you're going to catch your car on fire. So don't use that god-awful Teflon tape on your car. Well, that's this installment of Mostly Old Parts, and there you're looking at a Wyand accelerator intake that's soon going to go on my Roadrunner. My rant for the evening: I hope you understand, Teflon tape doesn't belong on an automobile. I'll see you tomorrow.